extrinsic aging is about 80% of the reasons why our skin ages. Some sun is good for you. A lot of sun, especially for photo aging, for skin aging that is driven by UV, is really bad for you. So again, looking at it from the visual perspective, we don't want a great deal of it, especially in one place. When our skin barrier is compromised, or by the way, the skin microbiome is compromised, what happens is that different things can hijack that communication ability of the skin and start to stress different areas.
Eshel is an entrepreneur in the biohacking and beauty fields with over a decade of executive experience in health, wellness, and beauty. Just so you know, we are going to talk a lot about skincare, as Amitai is the co-founder and CEO of Young Goose, a company whose goal is to introduce science to the skincare industry. In one interview, he mentioned, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Young Goose is actually a biohacking education platform that is monetized with skincare products born out of biohacking and scientific research. His educational content can be found on his podcast, the Biohacking Beauty Podcast. You can also experience his education by catching him on stage, as Amitai is a renowned speaker featured at events like Biohacking Congress and KetoCon. On his LinkedIn, he actually threatens, "Aging, we are coming for you." I'm excited to help him educate an even larger audience today. Amitai, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. The best introduction I've ever had, I think.
Yes, there we go. All right. So I was listening to your interview with Jean Valacara, the editor of Biohacking Magazine, and you got deep into your military career and the insights you have from your military experience. Even Jean noted that early on you were more mindful than many at that young age, and certainly he threw himself under the bus. I would also. It is also clear that you have a passion for deep introspection and then sharing your insights and your knowledge with others. What was your life like as you were growing up that drives this introspection and the desire to share and educate people?
Well, my life is I would say a pretty, if you look from a bird's eye view, a pretty regular upbringing, Israeli upbringing. I was born in a kibbutz, which is a kind of a commune in Israel, which basically believes in a lot of sharing between the community. There is some personal property, but not the same way we have it here in the United States. And then my parents and subsequently me, we moved to a normal suburban village in the north of Israel, very pastoral. And so that, as far as like my upbringing, it's pretty normal. What I think is less normal is growing up in Israel, in the 90s, 2000s, a lot of turmoil as far as like suicide bombings, things like that, of that nature. This is the height of the Second Intifada, losing some family members. And I think it's important to note that there is some kind of like normalization of deviation. It means when you see a lot of things happen on TV, every week, every couple of weeks, like some bus blowing up or something like that. It's not like you are experiencing something akin to like 9/11 every week, right? It's not that, but you are actually getting a little bit numb to those types of events, and that shapes, Israel as a country as far as humor, as far as myself included, by the way, as far as humor, as far as like our kind of what the Brits would call stiff upper lip, that was born from the same experiences around the bombing of London in the Second World War. So
I was just thinking of that. Yeah.
And so that is kind of how I grew up. Part of that upbringing is what Jonathan Haidt calls the moral of the group rather than the morals of the individual. So what we sanctify here in America is your freedom to basically do whatever, the pursuit of happiness. Basically, you can do whatever you want as long as you're not harming others. But there is obviously a limit. Like, you could potentially drive 90 in a suburban area, and you won't harm anyone, but the potential's there, so you're limited. This is part of how a group moral can affect your individual freedom. And in Israel, it's flipped. You do have individual freedom, but the morality or the needs of the group supersede that, because there are real needs for that for that hierarchy. For the most part, it's a good thing, but sometimes it's bad. For example, the compliance with things around COVID and regulation, for example, that happened in Israel, that's part of that adherence to the kind of joining of forces of a group rather than an individual. So part of that, you are very, you're very, I mean, there is an innate drive to excel as far as kind of where you end up in the military. I started getting basically my recruitment process to the military started around age 17, 16 and a half, 17. And I ended up in a special forces unit that is basically the land commando of the Israeli military. It's a unit called EGOZ. And most of my service, I was there in the intelligence gathering or recon capability. Ended up being the head of that capability in the unit. And that was about 5 years of my life. That was my first career, I call it, in which you learn a lot about friendship. You learn a lot about your mental, obviously, capability, but you also learn creative problem solving, which I liked the most, and team building. But creative problem solving probably was the number one thing that I kind of adopted as far as like associating something that I learned with my identity that continues to this day.
So it sounds so started in the kibbutz, which is a different environment, right? And then you move to a more traditional environment, or maybe less traditional, depending on perspective. And I think those types of things, I know my dad was in the military, so we moved every 2 years, mostly within the United States, but understanding that different regions speak differently and have different norms, cultural norms, really can open your mind. And then you're talking about this kind of maybe group think or group focus over individual focus.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where this comes from, right? Like maybe it's like, great, I'm collecting this information and I am supposed to share it. Like this is supposed to be brought to the masses. And in the process, you're also, well, I have to monetize it. Otherwise I can't bring stuff to the masses. And you end up with young goose. I think that's a great story. And I look at some of the interviews that you've done, and it is so deep. And we're going to get into that today about skin and skin care and all of that. But it's also born out of so many other kind of modalities of biohacking, right? Without just the skin focus. So I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation. So my understanding is your first kind of exposure to skin is that you were involved with the red light company. Talk about that experience and how that ultimately led you to Young Goose.
Okay, yeah, that actually connects to something you said a second ago. But so out of the military, I had some nice, interesting projects. Like I opened a bar in Tel Aviv. That was a complete failure. But I
don't get high off your own supply. I think that's what NWA says.
Exactly. I did not know that back then. No, but I tried a few things, and I think what the common denominator is that I was a contrarian. Normally, the same thing that would happen here in the U.S. if you were in a special forces unit, anything like that. You actually have a lot of people recruiting you and wanting for you to be a part of their project, if you would. But but Israel back at 2010 when I finished my military service, it was evolving very rapidly in what we call the high tech industry. Here you just call it the tech industry. And that was the majority of projects that were offered at the time. And I did not really like that whole concept, to be honest with you. Not just because I was a contrarian, and there was actually a lot of money in it, but just because I didn't want to do everything that, what everyone else is doing, I didn't want to do that. And I got recruited into this very cool therapeutic laser company that, as a contrarian, I said, this is a dying industry. LEDs is going to come for us all. LEDs were LEDs existed, for 10, 15, 20 years beforehand, but they just became very affordable. And we basically, I pressured that company to pivot into what I called a consumer-facing medical device. Today, what I described as consumer-facing medical devices is now biohacking. Really, it's the backbone of biohacking. But I pivoted them to make a consumer-facing device, which was a red light therapy device, not a panel like we're used to today, but it was like a handheld device that later on evolved into a panel and everything that we know today. But how did we get to skin? And how does it connect to what you said before about trying to improve people's lives or create a positive impact? So obviously, coming from a therapeutic standpoint, we had all these protocols and we had all of these anecdotal or published studies looking at how it can improve anything from, like, obviously pain, some cognitive issues, neuropathy, many different aspects. But skin wasn't really something that was discussed as far as like red light therapy. It was more discussed as far as like, how can we ignore the fact that most of the light gets absorbed in the skin and talk about other things that will make doctors buy a $30,000, $50,000, $100,000 laser. But when we were talking to a consumer, we mentioned, consumers, investors, whoever asked about, but it goes through the skin, right? Are there any skin benefits? And we said, there are, it's good for like collagen and stuff. And we want to move on. And they will ask more and more questions about it. That would be more and more what really they were interested in. And there was a eureka moment of me realizing that this is a real turning point as far as like providing someone a service or a device that will create large impact in their lives. Because right now, when they don't have any issues, they care about how their skin looks. But in a month, if they fell and bumped their knee, or God forbid, got a concussion or whatever, that would, what they used the device for would change rapidly, right? Tremendously. So that was kind of a connecting moment where I said, skin is interesting, because I never thought anything about it, to be honest with you. I'm kind of a rowdy boy at the time, right? It was almost
in the way, right? Like from the goal at the time, it was in between you and the goal, which is to get, with that the red light deeper into tissue.
Yeah, but also a 20-something-year-old guy interested in MMA, jiu-jitsu, came out of the military thinking he's super cool. I didn't care about, obviously, I did not have wrinkles at the time and did not care about them. So it wasn't something that even, I wasn't even aware that people care so deeply about these things. But that was the first connection. And I think providing value to people's skin is addictive, because you cannot really, it's a very tangible improvement. It's a very tangible benefit that people can get. And I can tell you, if you eat better, if you have less inflammation in your body, your skin's going to look better. If you sleep better, your skin's going to look better. It's very tangible. Whereas if we talk about other things that we really want to impact in people's lives, like happiness, it's not only is that very difficult to quantify. If you talk to, again, I mentioned Jonathan Haidt, who has a course about happiness in some University of Virginia Tech, something like that. People don't even agree what happiness is, how happiness is felt and looked like. So that's why skin benefits are addictive because everyone knows how better skin looks like, right?
And the feeling of getting a compliment about your skin. I mean, I've worked with influencers, kind of macho cowboy influencers who are like, this is when I get a quality face serum, I'm going to keep using it. And like, I've never been a face serum guy before or whatever. So yeah, there's it's a tangible, and that's for people who aren't even thinking about it, right? For that macho military guy, even when he starts to get compliments, then that can change the boat. But when you put it into, for women, the response is dramatic, right? And how they feel and how people feel. Like I'm very free with compliments. And I think that benefits me and the people that I'm giving the compliments to. So it's very interesting. So taking a red light laser company into the LED space, right? And then you're just aware and able to pull yourself back of like, okay, well, the lasers are dying, right? But there's an opportunity here. And then the people are asking questions about the skin, and the rest of the people on the team are like, well, stop. Why are you keep asking about the skin? Like, and then you're asking yourself, well, wait, there's opportunity here. That's great. And I have to imagine that gets into your products. Like, where are the opportunities, and then where are the pitfalls of that? Let's start kind of diving in to, okay, what are the key factors that cause the skin to age, and how is aging skin maybe different or not different than the aging process of other cells in our bodies?
Yeah. Great question. And a question that can be, I mean, we could just assume it's another organ, because it is an organ. Largest, not largest, if you want to, include the lymph system, whatever. It's an organ. But one of the characteristics of this organ is that it is a literal shield for the rest of your body. The only other organ that behaves like this in the same manner, if you would, is your gut lining, is their digestive tract, for that matter. So having said that, this is also an organ that communicates towards the outside. It communicates our vitality, sexual vitality, to the outside. So why is that important? It's because when we age, there are two types of skin aging. There is what we call intrinsic aging, which is mainly your natural aging process, driven by epigenetics, driven by, I would say, whole body changes. Again, whether it is like inflammatory load in the body or some other things that we can talk about, like hormonal changes. But there's something called extrinsic aging. Extrinsic aging is aging that is driven by the environment. But you could even think about it like the age-old discussion between like nature versus nurture in our behavioral psychology, right? And here extrinsic wins or loses, depends how you look at it. But extrinsic aging is about 80% of the reasons why our skin ages. It's important to understand that there are gray areas, which we can get to in a second. But as a matter of principle, 80% of the reason we age is because of the decisions we're making throughout our lives. And I think it's very important to understand, because it is almost in reverse. If we considered our liver or our brain or our heart, we need to work very hard to move the aging process in a few percentages. If not, to get 10% deviation to either direction is very difficult. We know that because we see people smoking and living until 100. And I can give many drinking. I can give many examples. But the bottom line is our skin really, as we grow older, becomes more and more the sacrificial organ for the rest of the health of our body. It happens because for women especially, premenopausal and postmenopausal hormone changes. Basically, the body abandons the need to communicate sexual vitality. So the body says, this is not something I need to invest energy in anymore. I'm obviously translating a few things that are happening here. But men and women alike, our body past our reproductive prime is really designed to be a vat of the sum of our knowledge, which will benefit our community as we grow older and will propagate our species more. That's from the evolutionary standpoint. And is becoming less and less the benefiting the individual, benefiting the passing on of genes of the individual. And that is why it is getting more and more, that is why mechanistically it becomes more and more of a barrier and less a communication organ.
So I've drawn that parallel because with our product, one of the testimonials is like skin, hair, nail improvements. And, I talk about that in the context of those are aesthetic features, right? Your hair, your skin, your nails, and if you're physically fighting something, dealing with some challenge, then your physiology is going to go like, well, we don't need to be aesthetically worried about our aesthetics right now. We just need to survive. And when that all gets in line, everything starts. Then we're like, oh, we can get back to the aesthetics, right? Interesting. When you say intrinsic and extrinsic, my mind immediately went to internal and external, but it's different, I think, because extrinsic, you say it's the decisions that we're making. So those decisions can be the food we're putting in our mouth, with then you might call them intrinsic, but it's actually an extrinsic decision. Do I have that right?
Yeah. That's why I say there are gray areas. So, for example, you might be activating a cascade, an epigenetic cascade that would then, trigger anything from, let's say I'm going to take an extreme scenario. Let's say you are one of those people that will smoke weed and get schizophrenia. Okay. And you will now have flooded your body or on a regular basis are now flooding your body with stress hormones. You will age faster. Okay. But that, although it started from an extrinsic action,
stimulus,
we can even think of it as something that was laying dormant and would have expressed itself later on. In any case, that's obviously up for debate. But obviously I took an extreme gray area and amplified it, but it happens in many other cases as well. It can happen with, our ability to the MTFHR gene. So our ability to metabolize folic acid, methylate folic acid. If we have a certain allele there, if our genes are comprised in a certain way, and we live in a society that enriches everything, including our vegetables and every food that we put in our mouth with folic acid, is it really our choice, or is it part of the environment we're living in, and then it's just how we age naturally? It's just worse because of that. So gray areas exist, but if we want to be very cut and dry about it, correct. How are you aging naturally? How would you have aged in a perfect world? Would be your intrinsic aging, and then extrinsic aging is everything that is any type of atrophy we introduce. Entropy, we introduce into that system. Okay, so perfect world, and then what are we doing to mess it up?
Okay, and so of extrinsic, right? So the decisions that we're making, we have this view, the clear view that skin is external, right? What percentage of this? So extrinsic is 80% of the skin's aging.
Yeah.
What percentage would you say come from internal versus external? Inputs.
Yeah, that's a great question. Internal would be, again, not large. Would be within that would be about 20%. So about 16% of overall aging. Okay, so 20% of 80. So
flexing your math skills, I like it.
so, but you know, one of the most I think one of the most common talking point would be UV radiation. UV radiation, you know, you could be on any camp you want to be. I think the discussion has not been concluded there. We know that some sun is good for you. A lot of sun, especially for photo aging, for skin aging that is driven by UV, is really bad for you. So again, looking at it from the visual perspective, we don't want a great deal of it, especially in one place, right? But we have other factors that are very, very, very large movers and shakers of that aging process, which are things that our body, and if we think about, again, if we're going back to what our body is used to deal with, evolved to deal with, things that our body has not evolved to deal with at all. For example, sedentary lifestyle or pollution, smoking, high energy, visible light. Blue light would be what most people would know. Blue light is really bad for our skin. EMFs, so obviously your phone or Wi-Fi. And there are other things that are a little bit more esoteric, but do play a significant role. So different, for example, like nitrogen and carbon-free radicals, glyphosates, heavy metals, things that are dependent on where you live and kind of the actions that you're doing in order to mitigate that. But for the general population, actually drive skin aging quite a bit.
So you said that some sun is good, a lot is bad. And this obviously is going to be a case-by-case type of skin type. But in general, like, what could people say? Because, you know, one of the questions I have further down, but we'll jump into it now, is like, there's a camp that like, you need to get sun and you need to get a lot of sun and it should be, you know, on your shirtless body regularly. And, but that, you know, when you start taking into account the damaging effects and the potentials for skin cancer, like that can't be right. And then no sun doesn't make any sense just because we've evolved with sun. Where like, how do we figure that out? Like what's a good amount of sun? What's a bad amount of sun? And I'm sure time of day makes a difference.
So I actually wrote an algorithm for it that calculates, you know, anything from like UV index to your skin type, etc.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, is
that available on your site or?
No, I can send it to you.
Yeah.
But I would say 30 minutes before 10 a.m. or after 3 p.m. is great for you. But I think there is a bigger point, which is like, what area in your body are you exposing? So right now, I'm talking with you from our little like recording loft, which you can see behind me the little thing. But I have artificial light on me. Actually, you can even see where it is coming from through the shadows on my face. And these lights actually lower the energy production of my skin cells. So they lower ATP. To the extent that artificial light is as good in lowering ATP, which is cellular energy, as red light therapy is good at increasing ATP. So just, you know, people are very proud of doing, you know, red light therapy like 10, 20 minutes a day. Gary Brecka talking about their protocol of getting into a bed for 20 minutes a day and feeling incredible. But most of us are under artificial light for 8 hours a day, right? So this skin that I am now bathing in artificial light and some EMF from my computer here is significantly impaired at dealing with UV in many, many different levels. Okay, dealing with the free radicals it creates, dealing with the DNA damage it creates, etc. So that is not the skin that consciously I should expose to the sun, right? I have a shirt on.
In fact, consciously, you should not expose it to the sun, right? So, so just to make sure I've got this right, I'm sitting in front of a bunch of white LED lights, so blue light. I shouldn't actually go out and stand in the sun. Maybe cover my face with a hat and then take off my shirt. That is where it starts to make sense.
Yeah. Not only making sense. Like, we know that the best light panels that you have are your back and your abdomen. Like, we know that that's where you make per centimeter squared the most amount of D3. So in general, areas that are commonly exposed on a regular basis to those environmental stressors, be it pollution, be it whatever, air quality in houses normally is poorer than outside. All of those factors together make it that the areas that are exposed on a regular basis are really bad at synthesizing the vitamin D3 or other detoxification, other beneficial effects that are driven by exposure to the sun. So what a smarter person would do is expose areas that are normally hidden, and they will get more of the benefits and less of the harm. So much so that I would say, if you were to expose your torso to noon sun for 5-10 minutes, I would say it's a positive thing to do. And the discussion is very complex when we get to studies, because normally studies that have not been done in the US or in countries that have a population that natively did not evolve there, show very different data than studies in Northern Europe, showing that actually that are normally quoted. So normally people who are sun proponents quote studies from Scandinavia, show that people that worked outside got less melanoma. They actually got they got carcinoma and stuff like that at a higher rate, but they did not get more melanoma. They actually got less. And the issue is that they evolved to deal with that sun, and not my friend Paul Sorbo, that lives in Denver and has Norwegian background, did not evolve to deal with the elevation and the latitude of Denver in the summer, and he should probably not consume that sun willy-nilly.
And how much of an impact? So as you get to darker skin tones, like you're saying, 30 minutes before 10 and after 4 p.m., 10 to 15 minutes of torso at high noon. How does that change if you have darker skin?
Oh, it changes dramatically. It changes dramatically, and we rate skin colors by Fitzpatrick type. So 1 and 2 cannot really get tanned, or tan very poorly. 3 is kind of what I have. Tans can get burned and can get tan. And when we get to the 5 and 6s, these are the darker skin tones. African Americans are normally going to be 5 or 6. They need about double or triple the amount of sun exposure. So we would say even we'll go 40, 50 minutes in that midday sun, and they can go. I would still limit the exposure of midday sun to 15, 20 minutes, but yeah.
So that definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. And the adaptation to sunlight is melanin based. So the reason that they would need more is the same reasons that someone would be more protected against the sun if they have exposed themselves for longer. So some of the camp that is just pro all sun all the time really speaks a lot about adaptation and about building something that is called a solar callus, which actually doesn't exist in reality. They are talking about an imaginary callus that would allow you, so if I have a calloused hands, I am and I want to work out, to do a CrossFit workout, it would actually assist me at my workout, because I will get less damage to my hands and I can do more pull-ups or whatever. So I will get more of the benefits of the workout, right? And that scenario does not exist when we talk about sunlight. So it's not like you can synthesize. If you have, Fitzpatrick 5 skin tone, you cannot synthesize vitamin D as well as someone that has Fitzpatrick 3 skin tone and also be more protected, right? It's either or. That we know that because African Americans in the United States, especially like in the northern part of the United States, are chronically vitamin D deficient. I mean, like over 90% of African Americans in the US are vitamin D deficient. So that is because it's harder for them to synthesize vitamin D. So that solar callus idea is maybe exists in Narnia. What I would say that one of the things that you will see people repeat as well is the existence of something called uroconic acid, or UCA, which isn't a more flexible version of UV protection, but it actually only protects against UVC, which we do not even get on Earth. So if anyone talks about UCA, which you'll see people unfortunately talk a lot about UCA and its expression in the skin, etc., it's they just heard, they just listened to one podcast too many, maybe. I don't know.
One pod. You know what? If you could identify and then provide that information, what is one podcast too many? That would be phenomenal. Yeah, that's part of this biohacking sphere, is to weed through the chaff and find the truth. And it takes some effort. You got to find people who are who you have faith in and who you believe do the work, right? Because a lot of people don't do the work. I interviewed Dr. Tom O'Brien, who wrote the Autoimmune Fix, and he said, listen, one of his homework assignments was you need to spend 1 hour per week just understanding health for yourself. And then there's people like you and I, if I only spent 1 hour a week, I'm on a vacation, a weird vacation where I don't have access to anything, because even when I'm on vacation, I'm still, following bloggers and biohackers. And so you really do have to do a lot of effort to get to the right kind of information.
Yeah. And I think it's important to, you and I are very privileged because it feeds into our profession. And if someone if someone's a lawyer or a whatever, okay, it doesn't really matter, but they have the Venn diagram doesn't exist there. I think it's they would see what we are saying right now from a point of like it's our privilege to be able to do that. Why am I saying that? It's because even it's important not to put people on a pedestal too much, to understand what is the A game, what is the thing that a specific person really specializes in and is connected to the source, if you would, at a with a bigger connection, and what is them kind of talking out of turn. I'll throw Andrew Huberman under the bus because I love Andrew Huberman and he's incredible, and sometimes he would speak about things that he will admittedly say, hey, look, I read 5-6 studies, here's what they show. And then I'll talk to, he did it about like ice baths, and then I'll talk to someone like my friend who owns an ice bath company, one of the most famous like speakers in the field, and he'll say, well, he got 10 things wrong. Same thing about peptides, same thing about skin, he just had one about skin, same thing. So it's important to but if you talk about like anything that he's more, I would say he's more schooled on, whether it would be like ophthalmology or neurophysiology, whatever, you could get a lot more from there. As an example, someone sent me another very, very, very famous doctor, very famous, one of the leading voices, talking about how gut microbiome diversity is very positive, and the same applies for the skin. But that is actually absolutely not true. And biodiversity in the skin is horrible, and that's not something you should be aspiring to
Striving for.
at all. So, and that's, by the way, not disputed. Like if you talk to people who are specialists in that, like Kiran Krishnan, for example, the founder of Microbiome Labs, among other things, they'll scoff at that notion. So it's really, really important to be able to curate information in a smart manner, if you would.
Find that one podcast too many and stop before it. All right. So because you brought up skin microbiome, I think this is probably relevant to that. I've heard you talk about sticky skin, leaky skin. What are those? Like, what would you give us some insights here?
Okay,
this is not one podcast too many, so give us the truth.
Well, actually, that's a great segue to that, because leaky skin is actually something that both Kiran and I started talking about a few years ago, and we now see it. I mean, it's crazy. It's like it has now become there is an effect called the runaway effect in evolution, which means you have something like deer antlers that started as a positive thing, but then it became a symbol of virality, and now it ran away from its original self-defense effect, and you could get deer, getting caught with huge antlers and it's like brush and dying and stuff like that. So it has a runaway effect.
But that happens after they mate, and so it continues to propagate.
Yes. So, and again, obviously, that gene carries on even with more fervor. So, there is a runaway effect happening with leaky skin. Not with sticky skin yet. It's going to come, but leaky skin. So leaky skin, what it really means is the leakage of information as opposed to the gut. So the gut, leaky gut means gut permeability to undigested particles, if you want, that trigger your immune system. So they act as the information, the undigested information, if you would, that then propagates through the system. Your skin doesn't really work that way because your skin has a natural sieve mesh type structure that doesn't allow particles that are over a certain size to enter your the deeper layers of the skin and then to your bloodstream, etc. But the skin, as we kind of mentioned in the beginning, is an information highway. It relays information directly to the brain. It's called the skin-brain axis. And it also relays information to other organs, such as your gut, for example. So when our skin barrier is compromised, or, by the way, the skin microbiome is compromised, and some other things. For example, senescent burden is becoming more and more emphasized, or more and more dominant. Yeah. What happens is that different things can hijack that communication ability of the skin and start to stress different areas, such as your HPA axis, which is the axis that is in charge of relaying stress signals from the environment to the rest of your body. So you could actually, by stressing that system, you actually are increasing anything from harder management of stress hormones, catecholamines, which are kind of the stress hormones in your brain, anything that's got to do with inflammation. So you're actually driving stress and skin and overall body aging through basically the malfunction of that communication ability of the skin to the rest of the body, to the brain, and then to the rest of the body. And that has been, there are now a very interesting body of research done by different facilities showing that. And again, anything from microbiome to acid mantle to senescent cells in the skin, all of those could be hijacked. So leaky skin is more the leakage of stressful mistakes in stressful information relayed from the skin to our brain and the rest of our body. Sticky skin is a different phenomenon, and it also has a few layers, but in general it means that pollutants, heavy metals adhere to the skin and build up, and it's very hard for our skin to kind of deal with that. And we can use different molecules. We can nourish the skin in different ways, from the inside, from the outside, in order to negate that stickiness of the skin. Why am I saying that there are different levels? Because there are different mechanisms that become sticky within our skin. One of them is the kind of layer that allows proteins such as collagen but mainly elastin to glide on top of each other. And these mechanisms actually become sticky as we grow older, and that's why we have impaired movement a lot of the time. So there are a lot of stickiness that's happening in the skin, but for the most part, we're talking about the adherence of environmental stressors to the skin and them building up there.
So when you say environmental stressors sticking to the skin, that everybody kind of understands you need for skin care, proper skin care, you need to clean. Do you guys have cleansers that kind of focus on releasing sticky skin? Is it just any soap could work? A classic soap works by attaching to oils and then warm water taking it away. We talk about what differences might be there in a good skin cleanser.
So that could happen. Unfortunately, cleansers, the classic cleanser you're talking about, also is basically attaching itself to a lot of the natural oils of the skin, and then stripping them off as well, and off balancing again the harmony that is your skin's natural protective barrier. So newer cleansers really do not do a great job at stripping off different factors because of the attempt to avoid stripping of natural oils. So we need to use we use harsher soaps, or we need to use different ingredients that allow us to kind of disperse or to negate that effect. So one of the best things to look for in cleansers is algae extracts, because what happens, there are a few specific algae extracts, especially red algae, but what they can do is they can build a protective layer around skin cells that does not allow these carbon and nitrogen free radicals basically to live in that environment and to survive in that environment, number one. Number two, it is harder for heavy metals and glyphosates to kind of build up on the skin. That's one way. Another way is with a protein called Ectoin. That would not be in a cleanser. That would be in products that would go, on more of the outer layer of the skin. So every product, for the most part, has a vector, has a material that holds it somewhere in your skin, because it has an address, if you would. So products that have an address that are more superficial, that are vectored more towards the superficial layers of the skin, we really want Ectoin there when we want to negate some of that sticky skin effect and some of the effect of other free radicals on our skin aging.
So do you have a cleanser with algae in it, or do you awesome. So you've got the cleanser that makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. We're gonna run up against the clock. I want to pick, I think, and this is my impression, that you're known for identifying kind of classic biohacking molecules and applying them into skincare. Touch on maybe your most popular product and what that molecule is and that process, so we understand the mindset going into that particular product. Okay,
great. So actually our most popular products by far, something that's blowing our mind that their success out there in the world, are our youth line of products. Now there are only two. There's a Youth Reset, which is a serum, and Youth Daily, which is a moisturizer. More to come in the future, but these are the two that we have now. And these combine a few really cool peptides, but really what they have, which is unique, is the combination of spermidine and spermidine precursors. So kind of full spectrum spermidine and NAD precursors, NR, NMN, things that boost NAD in our skin. And these two are maybe the most popular longevity supplements right now in the world. David Sinclair is on the board of the major spermidine company. He thinks it's the next NAD, and obviously he kind of was the oracle of NAD precursors, like it or not. But what we understand now is that they actually work in synergy. So together between them and a few other ingredients we have there, we cover the entire 12 hallmarks of aging. So the 12 reasons we've identified for why cells age. And that's super, super important because whatever products we want to use alongside it, whether it is our products or any other product, our skin is only going to react as well as it can, so as youthful as it can react. So if we use, retinol, which is obviously a very popular ingredient, whether we go to do a professional, surgery or facial or whatever that is, chemical peels, lasers, whatever, we're at the end of the day left with whatever our skin can react to. It is our skin that does the work. Everything else just requests work to be done. And these two combined ingredients, we've shown that can even reduce the biological age of the skin, even though I really hate using the word biological age. I actually don't think that there is such a thing. But the functional age of the skin by up to 20 years, which we're getting very, very, very good results and feedback from people.
So when you say kind of reversing the functional age, what are you looking at to kind of put a number on that?
So we look at a series of about 14 genes that are associated with youthful skin. So collagen genes, hyaluronic acid genes, elastin genes, but also a set of genes that are called lumicans, or lumicans is what they encode. LUM is the code word for those genes. And these are the bricklayers, if you would, of protein in your skin. So when we get cut or when we have any type of damage, the better we have this expression of genes, the better we react. It's not about, you make less collagen as you grow older. Making collagen actually is pretty easy for your skin because a scar is more collagen than what you had before. But a scar is the failure of those lumicans in bricklaying collagen or elastin or other proteins in a way which would be coherent. So these are the real stars of our rejuvenation or reaction of rejuvenation from anything else that we're going to do.
So you're looking at those genes or kind of the epigenetics signatures that are spinning off of those genes?
Yeah, we're looking at the expression of those genes. We did a couple of punch biopsy in vivo studies looking at the expression of those genes and then the enzymes or what they encode.
Excellent. Well, I have a litany of other questions that we're not going to be able to get to. I do want to ask one because it actually came up as I was thinking. Are you looking at a product with the rapamycin? Is that anything that's on your radar?
So that's why I said a couple of studies. We actually have one product that is called ProCare that is specifically, it has a rapalog. So it has an analog of rapamycin, and it does work through the mTOR pathway to do two things. It is senolytic, which means it does eliminate senescent cells, but it is also xenomorphic. So if senescent cells can be reversed in their function and become cells that are functioning cells in order to be killed off by your immune system. So making them discoverable to your immune system and having them go through, apoptosis or autophagy, which we do with spermidine, which is recycling. It does that as well, and that's a very so rapalogs are a better version for skincare than rapamycin because it has a short, it behaves more like a skincare product. I can apply it, once or twice a day. It has a short half-life as far as like how it interacts with the mTOR pathway, which we want to modulate all the time. So it should look like a heartbeat as far as like how we interact with mTOR, and not necessarily like I don't know, like a box wave, if you would.
Like a square wave, yeah.
So yeah.
Are rapalogs, are people looking at rapalogs for kind of consumption? That's good? I know there's biohackers doing it, but do you know of any studies that are going along with rapalogs?
Yeah. So there is a rapalog, which is an immunosuppressant for breast cancer that has been looked for as far as like a better version of mTOR modulator. Another one, which is an mTOR modulator that is not necessarily a rapalog, but is a very interesting mTOR modulator, is C15, or the branded supplement name Fatty 15.
Fatty 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting studies, 70 patents around the world. Very great people. Stephanie Van Wassen is the main founder. Incredible people. So yeah, that's something that I'm very hopeful for. I think, it's very important to understand that there is a huge difference between looking at something in lab settings and then doing, for example, what we did for gene expression, which is punch biopsies, which is very difficult to do. So normally when I say, they have many studies, etc., it looks very promising. And I hope it indeed will be some kind of a panacea for that version of aging.
I certainly have Fatty 15 on my desk, so I don't have anything particular to report, but I play around with a lot of protocols. All right, so we've got our wrap-up questions. We can take these kind of rapid fire. So Amate, do you have a target age that you want to live to?
Yeah, I'll take 150.
150. I like that. And how long do you think humans can live?
I think humans are going to live for a very long time. I just don't think maybe the word human would be applicable to those things. I think we're going to be a composite. We're going to be in some kind of Ray Kurzweil world by then, some kind of singularity by then. But that is our real power in extending life. It's not about extending the actual biological age of the body that I'm in now.
And you're really talking about kind of digitizing individuals? Is that tell me a little bit more if I'm off?
I think for me to so I'll answer that fully, but for me to speculate how this is going to look like, it's really more of a fun game rather than something I'll put my money on. This is
not an actual prediction. Yeah.
No, because once we will have advancements mainly in biological printing, biological 3D printing, but together with, for example, obviously AI and quantum computing, the ability to have extremely large models of which we play around with without the need of interacting with the real world per se, or creating real worlds in which we learn things faster. That combined with our technological ability to interact with the human body, that would be the short form answer to extending life. If we could go to the body shop, quite literally, like a car does, that would be very beneficial. That's not gonna make that. We're not gonna be able to extend every life like that, because there will still be accidents. There will still be things that are more problematic, because it's not only about life is not only about maintenance or function. It is also about inertia. So something that we don't really know even how to approach is the inertia of life. It means that if life stops, if a body is dead, we have no idea how to re-energize that body. And I think it's a completely, hypothetically, it's a completely different process than maintaining that body, right? So that's
Yeah.
one thing. And I think, yes, for the long term, really, if we want to get into really sci-fi here, it would have to be incorporating human biology and synthetic biology and non-native biology. And that is, I think, farther away than what I mentioned before.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. So you're a believer in that we are going to reach the escape velocity of aging, right? Like, that's a fair statement.
My son's name is Lev, which is longevity escape velocity. So
That's awesome. Okay, so yeah, you put your money where your mouth is. I like
Yeah.
that. All right,
put my baby where
what
my mouth
2
is.
to
which is-
3 what 2 to 3 protocols, habits, mindsets, let's call them shortcuts, because everybody likes shortcuts, to longevity and a long health span can you share?
I would say number one is temperature. Okay, temperature modulation is one of the best shortcuts to health, whether it is heat. Heat is more important. So getting our body to a very high temperature, but also cold, modulating these two is the best way to shortcut. And I'm on purpose, like you asked me about shortcuts, this is a shortcut. Having a sauna and an ice bath of some sort, or living somewhere cold for that matter, is the best way for us to extend life. Second is mindfulness. Mindfulness, I think, is the best habit someone can engage in. And I think the third is doing things that we do not want to do. That's a full podcast, but we have an area in our brain that actually grows when we do things that we do not want to do, but we do them anyway. And the size of this area of the brain is correlated with our ability not to die, or to fight through, with longevity in general, but to fight through positions which the body has a hard time sustaining. That, by the way, that inertia.
Interesting. So I've had debates with biohackers about, is the cold plunge just what you described, doing the thing that we don't want to do to expand that area of the brain so that then you're able to tackle the things. And I also have equated it to, there's a West Point graduation speech by an admiral that talks about making the bed and just doing that one thing that you don't want to do. And in the context of making a bed, you come back to, at least at the end of the day, that was done right, even if everything else has gone to hell. I think
I have a joke about that, though.
Yeah.
So we actually, if you are interested in skin health, do not make your bed, at least for 30 minutes after you wake up, because by having the bed not made, there is more surface area exposed. You will air out your bed sheets and your mattress, and you'll have less dust mites. Really, yeah. This is So do not make your bed to live longer. Yeah. But do it.
Right.
But want to make your bed, and then do not do it. That's how you're going to.
Yeah. So now you fought it, and then as you're walking out the door, you don't want to go back up and make your bed. So then go back and make your bed.
Exactly.
There's a whole process. All right. Well, what is 1 to 2 things people get absolutely wrong regarding longevity and long health span? And we can even throw in, skincare. I think that's obviously appropriate.
Okay, so vitamin C, I think, is something people get wrong. And when I say vitamin C is essential. It's great. Synthetic vitamin C, what we call ascorbic acid, is not the outer shell of a vitamin C molecule that exists in nature. It's devoid of minerals, and some people call it factors, but really these are enzymes that are present when we eat natural whole food vitamin C. without them, vitamin C in large quantities, in quantities that people, in IVs and stuff like that, is very problematic. It actually causes a more recent form of cellular death discovered that is called ferroptosis, which means excited iron atoms drive aging. So it becomes pro-inflammatory, pro-oxidative, and pro-aging. Obviously, in skincare, I mean, that's the cheap. If you want to make the cheapest, good-looking skincare, you're going to just say, oh, it's 20-30% ascorbic acid. Very cheap, very easy to do. The problem is that you will be maybe getting short-term benefits, but you'll be basically poisoning people's skin. So that's one thing that I think people are getting significantly wrong. The other thing is, again, is comfort, is the pursuit of comfort. I'm guilty of it. I think anyone ever in the world is guilty of pursuit of comfort. And I think it is the catching ourselves. It's like when we're meditating and we're catching our mind drifting somewhere, catching ourselves, bringing us back to the understanding that we need to challenge ourselves, do it playfully, do it with good spirits, but challenge ourselves, I think, is the biggest habit, again, someone can have in their life.
What is it? The phrase is something like aging is the kind of relentless pursuit of comfort. So I think it's not the word relentless, but it's something with a similar meaning. Mm-hmm. What would be ascorbic acid? Are you just saying related to skin as a topical, or is that also consumption?
It's much easier to drive that specific type of aging in the skin, because you're really overloading the skin with a molecule that is not fresh. So if you had, not saying that that's what you should do, but if you had like liposomal blah 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 vitamin C that was kept, like ascorbic acid that was kept in the fridge, shipped to you, you could get away with significantly higher percentages. But when you're talking about a product that was made like a year and a half ago, and you bought it off a Sephora shelf, and it was shipped there in the heat, etc., applying it on your skin, it is already very, it's unstable, oxidized, etc. And it's much easier to get to that bad effect, if you would. But that's full body as well. I mean, I love vitamin C. I think vitamin C is critical, but not only from whole food sources. There are other forms of vitamin C that people can supplement on, such as sodium ascorbate, calcium ascorbate, some like other forms that are closer to the source. They're bound to some minerals. They have other things in the formula that can contribute the ability to utilize vitamin C, for that matter, other polyphenols. So look for those rather than just vitamin C, or just ascorbic acid, if you would.
Amitai, how can people contact you?
They can, the best way is actually send us a DM on Instagram, because the lady who manages Instagram does a great job. But they can also reach out. We have like a contact us on our website. We have, which is younggoose.com. We have a service at younggoose.com that people can reach out. I'm not very responsive. If you try to contact me, it's not going to work. But
wait, I think I had that experience.
Yes. Yes.
What's your Instagram? Young Goose?
Young Goose. Young_Goose_skincare.
_Goose_.
Yeah, but if people just search Young Goose, we're the first one that pops up. Obviously, I think the podcast, if I touched on things that are important to people, I think the podcast is the best way to learn about it. We're going to have you, Chris, on the podcast to learn about C60 and anything else that you can inform us with. So that is where we kind of dive deep into the things that we discussed today.
Okay, and the podcast is Biohacking Beauty.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Excellent. And Amitai, what are you excited? What in the near future are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited about biologics. I think exosomes, growth factors, stem cells are very interesting. I think there are 99% of the industry is full of BS. But the 1% are doing an incredible job. And we've just decided that we want to empower those 1%. So we're putting a lot of our weight behind some of the more interesting projects, especially from Korea, that are happening in the biologics space. In the US, it's obviously a little bit more difficult. I'm excited about the Cell magazine, the aging magazine specifically of Cell magazine. I think they're doing an incredible job. I just was talking with someone before. So if anyone is like a super nerd, that's what they want to subscribe to. Cell in Aging, it's called. And I'm excited about my family. That's I think the most important. I have a 6-month-old son. I have the best business partner and wife someone can ever ask for. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And congratulations. That's awesome. All right. So you can find him Instagram. You can just search for Young Goose, young_goose_skincare. The website is younggoose.com. The podcast is Biohacking Beauty. Amitai, it's Amitai, right?
No, Amitai. It's a good. You said
Amitai.
one. Yeah.
Amitai, it was such a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.